Dear friends, this video will play your heart deeply. He will reveal truths that many are unaware of: families separately by force. After watching, your understanding of the value of family ties will become. If you value family union, subscribe to this channel, leave your like and write United Families in the comments. We'll talk about Uyghurs children in China and as policies. Government has separated Muslim families. The Chinese government implemented measures that pushed children away from their parents. And what were the consequences? For Allah's will, even with so many children separated from their families, the cultural and religious identity Uyghur continues to resist through generations. So if you believe in the strength of family ties, watch this video until the end. It is 2018. China presented itself as a modern global power. During this period, the Uyghurs' Muslim families began to face a systematic separation policy. Children were sent to distant boarding schools. Parents were taken to vocational training in closed facilities. Schools in interns were built at a rapid pace, and those that existed were expanded to receive more and more Uyghurs children. Friends, before 2017, most of the Uyghurs children grew at home with their families, learning traditions, language and religious practices with their parents and grandparents. During this period, the government launched an intense campaign to modernize education in Xinjiang. As a result, tens of thousands of children were separated from their parents and sent to state schools. The few who remained with families were under constant supervision of authorities. At that time, keeping religious traditions with their children in Xinjiang was risking lose their guard permanently. If a family were identified by practicing Islamic teachings with their children, parents could be sent to re-education fields and their children to boarding schools. All aspects of child rearing became monitored by the state. Friends, the authorities feared that Islamic values would be transmitted to the new generations, then implemented a system to interrupt this transmission. Cultural. The result was a generation of children growing up without knowing their own roots and traditions. Families in the region were forced to choose between abandoning their beliefs or lose your children. To ensure that children adopt values aligned with the state, they were separated from any traditional family influence. Each family, Muslim Uyghur, was forced to sacrifice his own family unity to avoid still worse consequences. So you can imagine their suffering. Children, you might think that after so much forced separation, family and cultural ties of the Uyghurs should have been completely destroyed. Friends, we want to clarify that after so much suffering, there would hardly be a community capable of keep your cohesion. But family love among the Uyghurs is like an underground river, even when forced to disappear from the surface, continues to flow in the depths, seeking new ways to emerge. This is a testimony of the strength of parental love. There are reports of children who, even separated for years, still remember the prayers their parents taught them. These reports are evidence that the harmonious development of children does not. It can be achieved by destroying family ties, but strengthening them. China tried to break the intergenerational cultural transmission, but the power of ties of family love persists through adversity. There are still Uyghurs families in the diaspora in countries such as Turkey, Malaysia and United States, where mothers and fathers desperately seek to find their children again, left in China. During religious festivals such as Eid, many exiled parents, they put pictures of their children at the table, praying so that they can once get them again. Human rights organizations confirm that the number of separate children from their families reaches hundreds of thousands, and many of them will grow without ever know your true cultural and religious heritage. Friends, it is estimated that more than 880,000 Uyghurs children are in boarding schools, state-owned companies, separated from their families. We would like to share with you a moving story that we are sure TOC are your hearts. Love between parents and children is certainly a divine gift that transcends borders and oppression. Allah says we should honor our parents and take care of our children. China involuntarily demonstrated the power of this love in Xinjiang. This case, it happened in 2019. The region was under rigid state control. The government had implemented severe policies for family separation and re-education en masse. As a result, countless children grew without knowing their own origins. At this time, a teacher from one of these boarding schools shared his experience in an anonymous statement that came to me. I will report your words exactly as she told me. I worked in a boarding school in Hotan and she said, everything I witnessed, I will count on my own words. She said, "It was that week." I said to my colleagues, "If continue to erase the memories of these children, the government will be able to transform a whole generation into people without roots. There are only a few small gestures that still connect these children to their past." Hearing this, I was very intrigued and wanted to know what gestures were these. My colleagues, I explained some observations and I started to pay attention. Carefully, I noticed subtle behaviors among children. When I arrived at dormitory at night, I realized that even under constant surveillance, some traditions found ways of persisting. After talking discreetly with some children, I discovered a surprising pattern. The teacher who told me this did not find official explanation for the phenomenon. I approached one of the children and asked, "Little, why you always rounds his hand on his face before bed?" The child hesitated, but answered softly, "My mother did this to me every night. She said it was a way to ask for Allah that protected me during sleep." Why did this child have this ritual? When I observed more carefully, there was an environment of deep loneliness. I immediately noticed other behaviors, similar: children who kept small stones under the pillow, others who they whispered before eating. The teacher said that when she saw a child of 6 years discreetly teaching another younger how to do this night facial gesture, people around were tense, but no one interfered at that intimate moment. No one denounced because it was just an innocent gesture. After that, I started to notice even more details. All older teachers were aware of these small acts of memory, cultural, but pretended not to see, afraid of the consequences of reporting them. No one shared these observations openly because it could be interpreted as a failure in the educational process. I just watched silently and I moved on. As I knew more children, they looked at me with a mix of hope and apprehension. I asked a more experienced colleague how to deal with these situations and followed your advice not to simply not interfere. While trying to understand better, a 9-year-old girl approached me during an art class and designed a traditional Uighur pattern. I was surprised. I asked where I had learned that pattern, and she just replied that, with him. Later, his parents came to visit her. One of the revisits allowed only 30 minutes supervised. I noticed that the mother used the same pattern in her tissue. I thought the girl had created the drawing spontaneously, so I asked discreetly about other traditional symbols. She looked around cautiously and just smiled without answering. I was intrigued and asked how these cultural memories persisted despite all attempt to delete them. An older colleague smiled and said, "It is impossible to separate completely a child of its origins. Before being brought here, they lived years with their families. These first impressions are too deep to be erased." Then I asked why the system kept trying. To my surprise, he replied, "Because they do not understand that identity is not just what we explicitly teach, is in the little things, in the way a child folds your clothes, how to comb your hair, as you smile. Things they learned watching your parents for years." No one here realizes that even without mentioning religion or culture, children, they carry these influences on their daily behavior. The memory of the oldest still remembers their homes and families. When a child is separated from her parents, she doesn't forget, she preserves each memory as a treasure. Our drawing girl? She was 7 years old when she was separated from the family. Your mother sewed this pattern in all her clothes. Now, whenever you miss you, she draws him. If you had not noticed and mentioned, she would keep doing this secret, like hundreds of others. The teacher. Then he said that when he left that school, he saw other children in different boarding schools, and realized the same patterns of behavior if repeating small gestures of cultural resistance that survived despite the system. The woman was thrilled to talk about these children and promised herself to document these stories one day. Friends can separate children from their families and ban religious teachings. But when love and identity have already been planted in a child's heart, no system can completely eradicate them. Friends, witnessing this, I remembered the sacred words about how we should value and protect children, as they are our continuity in this world. Write "protect children" or gathered families in the comments. Share this video for more people to know these stories. We will meet again with a new video. Until then, that Allah protects all separate families.